I'm just going to pick up where I left off a couple weeks ago. We're in week 5 of our series called I Am. And for those of you who haven't been here, let me just sort of share with you what this whole series is about. We're journeying through the book of John. So if you have your Bibles, you can go ahead and flip there to John chapter 6 is where we're going to be. In the book of John, John records 7 miracles of Jesus, and he records 7 I am statements of Jesus. And we are walking through the miracles right now. We will eventually make our way to the I am statements. But the miracles, actually, the first 3 miracles that John records teach us really how, or really point us to how we can be saved. And if you haven't had a chance to listen to any of them, go back and listen to weeks 1 through 3, and you'll hear about the first 3 miracles and in what way do they point us to being saved. And then the rest of the miracles, the last 4 miracles, what they describe to us and demonstrate to us is the effects of salvation in the life of a believer. And so today we are on week 5, and so we are therefore on the 5th miracle. And so with that said, let me pray. And if you would, bow your heads and pray with me. And here's what I would like for you to do. Number 1, would you just pray right now, just give you 5 seconds, pray and ask God to open your mind and your heart for him to teach you what he wants to teach you this morning. Would you do that? And then if you would pray for me. It's been a chaotic morning with all of the technology stuff going on. I have hit the floor running, working with computers this morning, not how I necessarily wanted to prepare myself for worship. So if you would pray for me. Father, we come to you this morning and we say thank you for your word. It is absolutely beautiful in the way it directs and guides our lives. And Father, if we would just quit trying to outsmart you and just live our life according to your word, our lives would be so much better. And so, Father, the beautiful thing is that you describe in the miracle that we're going to talk about today, you describe the results of our salvation and the results of our relationship with you. Lord, I just pray that you would teach us again through your word and through your Holy Spirit. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. All right, so what I want to do is I want to begin by telling you a story. When I was a kid, I haven't met you guys, most of y'all know my story. I didn't meet my dad until years ago. He lives over here in Fitzgerald, Georgia. And so growing up, I didn't really have a dad. I had some father figures in my life, but didn't have a dad. And so I wasn't really confident when it came to playing sports. No, I was kind of athletic as a kid, but I just didn't play sports with other guys, so I didn't really have any confidence in my abilities versus their abilities. And then one day, me and a couple of friends from the neighborhood, we were just out playing baseball. They played baseball, and we were just kind of in their yard, and they threw me a couple pitches, and I hit them pretty good, and they were like, man, you should play baseball. And I was like, really? And they said, yeah, you should play baseball. So I had my mom, I asked my mom, I said, would you sign me up for rec league baseball? She went and signed me up for rec league baseball, and we got out there, and it's the craziest thing. I mean, it's just amazing. So I get up there, and I get in the batter's box. You know, they do these evals, right, where they let you get in the batter's box, and they'll have some coach that'll get up there, and he'll throw some pitches, and you get to take some swing. I tell you, the first pitch I saw, so the coach gets up there. His name was, matter of fact, he's the chief of police in the town that I grew up in now, and they called him Pumpkin. I don't know why a guy would want to be called that, but that's okay. If you're a guy and you're called Pumpkin, man, more power to you. But anyway, and maybe that's why I had success on the first pitch, because a guy named Pumpkin was throwing the ball. Another story for another day. But anyway, he gets up there and he says, you ready? I said, yeah. Nervous. I'm like, literally, I think I'm shaking. And he throws it and I just swing. And I made contact and that joker, I mean, it flew and it bounced off the fence. And I was like, well, that was pretty easy. You know, beginner's luck. And I hit the ball pretty well. I never hit another one that far during the probably 10 pitches I got, but I hit the ball pretty well. So they put me on this team, and you know, if you're a coach, if you've ever been a part of these rec league player evaluations, when you evaluate a player, I'm sure they looked at me and said, man, this guy right here, he's a ringer, right? And I'd never played before. So they put me on this team, so I get up there, we start practicing, and I remember I did pretty good in practice, wasn't a lot of pressure, but suddenly I'm going to play my first game. And I remember we were playing in Lottie, Florida. 2 things you need to know about Lottie, Florida. Lottie's about the size of Ocilla, and you better not speed through Lottie, Florida. If you've ever been through there, you probably know what I'm saying. That's a speed trap and a half, okay? And so we're playing baseball in Lottie, Florida, and so I'm scared. Like, I'm getting up there, and I get in the batter's box, and I'm just standing there like this, and strike 1 goes by, and strike 2 goes by, and strike 3 goes by. And I went back to the dugout, And he's like, you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. And what it was, in my head, I was scared to swing. I don't know why, but suddenly in the game, I was just scared to swing. And so in my head, I'm going, maybe if I don't swing, I won't strike out, and maybe I'll walk. And so sure enough, I get up the second time, a strike comes by, and then I think the next 4 pitches were all balls, and I get to walk. And so I was like, okay, that was good. So I got on base. And then like the next 2 or 3 at-bats over the course of the season, when I got up there, I just would never swing the bat. And I remember I walked in the dugout after striking out one time, and my coach looks at me and he says, listen, if you don't swing the bat in your next at bat, if you don't swing, I don't care if the ball's 10 miles high. He said, if you don't swing the bat, I'm going to bench you. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound fun. Like, I don't want to sit and watch baseball. So next at bat, I get up there, ball's coming right down the middle. I crush it, get an inside the park home run. And as they say, the rest is history. And here's the thing, and this is the reason I tell you this story. Some of you are standing in the batter's box of life, and what you're hoping for is that, you know what, I just don't want to mess up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play it safe. You're like me in the box as a little kid, and you're like, I'm not going to take any big swings. I'm just going to let the balls come as they may, and then whatever happens, happens. And if I walk, I walk. And if I strike out, I strike out. But I just don't want to take a swing. And this is where a lot of us in our faith life, this is where we live. As long as we feel like as long as we try to just play it safe, everything's going to be okay. When it comes to following Jesus, I'm not going to get too crazy. I'm not going to step out on faith. I'm not going to do some things that I really feel like maybe he's called me to do. Or maybe it's just simply, I'm not going to trust his word in this area because it feels unsafe to me. Like all my life, I've done things on my own and I've figured my way and I've navigated my way. But I'm not going to trust God in this because it just feels uncomfortable for me. And here's the problem. Some of us, as we do this, as we stand into the batter's box of life, and we're watching good pitches come by. God's teeing them up for us. I mean, he's just pitching them right down it's middle of the plate, belt high, and he's putting them in there, he's grooving them in, and he's going, hey, I just want to see you hit because I believe in you. Just like my coach, he was like, man, you just got to swing. And we're just watching these pitches come by. And the problem is that God has called us to the batter's box of life, and he's created us to do so much more than what we're currently doing. And what happens is, and this is kind of what happened with me in the batter's box, because I'm not hitting, because I'm not hitting the ball, and I never get to experience the joy of rounding all 4 bases at one time. And I might walk and I might get on first, but even as I'm walking down first base, the first baseline to get to first in my walk, there's still this part of me that goes, you know what? I can do better. I can do more. I can help my team better. I can help my family better. I can help my whatever. I can be better on my job. There's all of these areas in life where God's just going, look, I put you here for this reason. I'm going to groove these to you. And what we do in life and what we tend to do in our faith is we just sort of let the balls and the pitches go by. And we never really take a big swing. And as long as we try to convince ourselves that we will swing at the next pitch, while never actually swinging, we limit our experience in life. And we limit our experience as followers of Jesus Christ to an occasional walk and a lot of the times just an absolute strikeout. And that's how we feel. We walk through life and sometimes we feel like, man, I'm just striking out of my faith. And here's what happens. For a lot of Christians, it's like, I'm striking out. I might as well just quit. Why go to church? I can't make it. I'm not doing it right. And I feel like every time God gives me something or puts something in front of me to do that's challenging, I shy away from it. I'm not a good follower. And that's what the devil would have you believe, is that you're not good, you'll never do, you'll never swing, you'll never make a difference. And so we quit. And a lot of people they're quitting the church. They're leaving. Why? Because there's no excitement in it for them. And the reason there's no excitement in them for them in it is this. It's not that God's not giving opportunities to swing for the fences. It's just that we just want to continue playing it safe. Leave the bat on the shoulder and never take a swing at it. And here's the thing. This approach leaves us frustrated because we feel this tension. And here's the tension. The tension isn't always there, but it does pop up occasionally. And we felt it before. I'm sure you felt it before. And it usually pops up at the most random moments, but this tension, what it does is it makes us begin to question past decisions that we've made. We begin to question like all the missed opportunities, and we question our commitment to God, and we question whether or not we're ever gonna be able to accomplish anything or do anything. And we begin to question everything that we've done in our life. And here's the tension. It causes us to look back and wonder what could have happened, right? Like we've asked that question before. What could have happened if I would have followed Jesus in this? What would have happened if I would have stepped out when God put that thing in front of me? What would have happened if I would have done this? What could have happened if I would have made a different decision? What could have happened if I would have just swung for the fences? What could have happened if I would have just gone for it? When God called me, when God put that thing in front of me, that time that God brought me into the church and everything just felt exciting. And the reason that when we come to faith in Christ, and the reason that when we join churches or get a part of a church family, the reason that it all begins to feel exciting for us is because we did something. We took a step of faith. That God, I feel like this is what you're calling me. You're calling me to salvation. You're calling me to a church. You're calling me to a particular area of ministry. You're calling me to do something. And we take a step of faith, and our heart it just starts beating, right? And it's pumping. And I mean, it's pumping fast and we're excited. And the adrenaline's going, and we're like, man, this is good. This is amazing. Like stepping out on faith right here, that was so incredible. It's like a shot of adrenaline. And then what do we do from that point, right? So we come to faith in Christ, we join the church, we get involved in a ministry, everything's exciting, and then what happens? We quit taking steps of faith, and then everything seems like everything calms down, it sort of mellows out. And I just want you to know something. God's got more for you. And so if you find yourself in one of these places where your heart just kind of seems complacent, like your resting heart rate, spiritually speaking, is really low, and you just feel like, man, it's been a while since I have been excited about something that God's doing in my life. Today's for you. Today's absolutely for you. And this miracle that Jesus is going to show us today is absolutely for you. The tension that I'm talking about is this strange feeling that every one of us experience on occasion, that we were made for more. That we were made for more. And that not only were we made for more, like we were saved for more than what we're currently experiencing. That perhaps somewhere along the way, we have allowed our fears to be a major contributor to our decision-making process. And though we may have metaphorically walked some, it has never really made us feel alive. And so I want to encourage you today as we look at this miracle recorded in John chapter 6. And by the way, we're going to flip from John 6 to Matthew 14. This miracle is recorded in Matthew and Mark, and it's also recorded in John. And each have kind of their different spin. And Matthew's, we're going to use Matthew's because Matthew kind of expands a little more on this story. So we're going to be between John 6 and Matthew 14. But what I pray God would encourage you to do today is whatever that area is that popped into your head when I began to speak about that next step of your faith journey, whatever it may be, that God would encourage you today to take the bat off of your shoulder and swing for the fence. Because you will never hit, right? Like, you will never hit if you don't swing. You will never hit if you don't swing. And I pray that God would encourage you to take the bat off your shoulder, swing for the fences so you can feel the joy of rounding all four bases, because it's what you were made for. John chapter 6, this fifth miracle recorded by John, we're going to see two unbelievably great results of our salvation. Two unbelievably great results of our salvation that if we're not careful, fear will cause us to miss these, okay? By the way, you already know that Paul wrote to Timothy. He says, "For God has not given you a spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of sound mind," or self-control. God has not given you a spirit of fear. And this is something that we're going to see today that had the opportunity, and actually did for a lot of these people that we're going to see, kept them from stepping out and experiencing the beauty of what Jesus had for them. And my prayer again today is that all of you would be challenged by God to take the bat off of your shoulders. John chapter 6, starting in verse 16. If I'll get in the right book, I'm in Luke. Let me flip over to John. All right, John chapter 6, starting in verse 16. It says, when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into a boat, and started across the sea to Capernaum. It was dark, and Jesus had not yet come to them. Now, when we know that from Matthew's account, and we also know from John 6:15, if you go back and read the verse that preceded what I just read, we know from those two verses, from Matthew's account and from John 6:15, that Jesus sent the disciples to get into a boat. Now remember, this is right on the heels of the miracle of the feeding of 5,000. And remember, we talked about that. That's 5,000 men plus women and children. It could have been as many as 10 to 15, 20,000 perhaps that Jesus fed. So that miracle, this is right on the heels of that. So imagine the scene. Jesus is there. The crowds of people are there. They've just fed all these people. People are in absolute awe over what Jesus has done in the feeding of all these people. Remember, they collected just basket after basket after basket of leftovers from 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. And now we see that Jesus looks at his disciples and he says, hey, I want you to get in a boat and I want you to go to the other side of the sea. I want you to just cruise on. And the reason that he does is, if we look in John 6:15, it says, perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force and make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. Now, wait a minute. Isn't that the point? I mean, Jesus, isn't the point of you coming to establish a kingdom and you as the king of that kingdom, and you've performed this miracle, everybody's blown away by what you've done, and now you perceive that they are coming to make you their king, and you're going to go, disciples leave and I'm taking off. I'm going to go retreat somewhere and pray. Perceiving that they were about to come and take him by force and make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. I mean, if Jesus came to establish his kingdom, and part of the purpose of Jesus' miracles was to authenticate who Jesus was, that he is the Son of God, he's the Messiah. If that's all true, then why send the disciples away and then retreat when they want to make him king? Well, they want to make him king for all the wrong reasons. They want to make Jesus king because they believe that Jesus is going to establish some other kind of kingdom. That Jesus is going to come in, he's going to be a kind of king that's going to come in a type of war king, and he's going to overthrow the Roman government, and in doing so, he's also going to become this miraculous provider for the people of Israel, and they are ecstatic. So they want to make Jesus the king of their life for all the wrong reasons. Let me just say this, let this be a warning to all of us here today. If we come to Jesus for any other reason than the presence and person of Jesus, if we come to him for anything else, and by the way, this also includes heaven, let me just say that. If you come to Jesus for heaven or anything else, that's called idolatry. Jesus has no part of that kingdom. Jesus, because here's the thing, some of us, we go, you know what, I come to Jesus because when I die, I want to go to heaven. Look, I'll be honest with you. I kind of agree with you. It's better than the alternative, right? None of us want to go down there to the guy with the pitchfork who coaches at Alabama. Sorry, that just slipped. It's Saban. Oh, Saban. That's the correct pronunciation. My fault. To all you Bama fans, just kidding. Jesus did not come just to save us so that we could go to heaven when we die, okay? I mean, in much the same way as these people who were like, oh, Jesus, you performed a miracle? Yes, we want to make you a king. In the same way, we go, hey, Jesus, we want to make you our king. And we want to make you our king so we can go to heaven when we die, so that you'll give us good stuff, so that life will never hurt and it'll never be hard. We just believe Jesus said, if you're a miracle maker or a miracle worker and a way maker, that, hey, we want all those things, make a way for us, give us all the miracles. We're good with that. So in that, if that's our approach to Jesus, what are we really worshiping? Are we worshiping Jesus or the things that he's going to give us? And if you're worshiping the things that he's going to give you, does that not make you an idolater? And see, Jesus looks at these people and here they all of a sudden they get ramped up like, oh my goodness, we had 2 fish and 5 loaves and he makes Panera bread. And man, we all had sandwiches and soup and it was phenomenal. And then yes, let's make him our king. I mean, this would be amazing. We'll get to feast every week. He'll overthrow the Romans. We'll have our freedom. It'll be great. And Jesus says, no. Not why I came. Disciples, y'all go get in the boat, go to the other side of the sea, and I'm going to go retreat, and I am going to go pray. Verse 18. In verse 18, it says, the sea became rough because a strong wind was blowing. If we flip over, and you can flip there or I can just read it to you, in Matthew chapter 14, verse 24, it says this about this same moment, but the boat by this time was a long way from the land and beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. This is a beautiful picture, by the way, of Jesus and the church. And so if for some reason you got preached this false gospel, that if you come to faith in Christ, that everything in your life is just going to be beautiful and easy from here on out, I want to just put this up here for you for, exhibit A, all right? Jesus sends the disciples to the boat to go to the other side of the sea, knowing what's going to happen. And again, it's a beautiful picture of Jesus in the church. Jesus is on the mountain praying while his followers are living in a storm. Can you just imagine? I remember in 1994, I'm on a ship in the Navy. We're going overseas. We're trying to make our way to Hong Kong. A typhoon is going through. And I just remember the craziest things happening. Our captain was like, we're going to go through this. We're just going to go straight through the storm. We can make it. It's a big old Navy aircraft carrier type deal. We're big enough. We can we'll steam right through it. And I remember that we were in 20 plus foot swells, okay? And so we are in one moment you're looking up at the top of waves, legitimately from here to the ceiling, because that's about 20 feet. And then the next minute you're on top of that swell looking back down at the bottom. And stuff started breaking loose, things just started breaking in the ship, and we were like, okay, the captain was like, hey, we got to flip this thing and turn around. Being in the middle of a storm at sea is not like just being out there and it's a little choppy. It's scary. And these guys are sent by Jesus into it. Here's the thing. Jesus, sometimes I think, this did not surprise Jesus. When he sent them, he knew what they were going into. And I think sometimes we live our life and we think that Jesus is somehow surprised by what's going on in our life. Jesus, you have no idea. So let me inform you, right? Sometimes I think we believe this, that Jesus is surprised by the circumstances that we find ourselves in. It may sound a little something like this. Jesus, you'll never guess what happened today. We talk to him, right? Jesus, you'll never guess what happened today. They got my order wrong at drive-thru again. If you're from Fitzgerald, you relate, right? Yes, I know, that's the 5th time in a row, Jesus, yes. I didn't know if you knew, but I would inform you that they got it wrong. But when I realized it before, I got home and I turned around, but when I turned around, somebody hit me and hit my car. Actually, it wasn't my car, Jesus, it was my wife's car. And then when I got home, she was mad because my car or her car had a dent in it. And so that created an argument. And Jesus, I don't know, but we're having marriage problems. I didn't know if you knew that. But Jesus, I had her on her hands and knees, right? I got back, she got mad. She's mad because her car's all messed up and dented. But Jesus, I'll have you know that, I had her on her hands and knees. She was practically begging. She got down on her hands and knees and she said, get out from under that bed, you coward, and fight like a man, right? So it's we feel in life when bad things happen, when difficult circumstances come, we're like, Jesus, I need to inform you what's going on. Jesus knows. The storm that you're going through, Jesus knows. Matter of fact, he sent you into it. That's something that kind of preaches against what a lot of other preachers would preach. That's why you got to be careful who you listen to on TV. Jesus will send you into a storm for a purpose, and he absolutely sent the disciples into a storm for this purpose. And by the way, great news, Jesus is never surprised by the storms that we find ourselves in. So here is where we need to shift our thinking. Instead of trembling in fear over the storms that we find ourselves in, we need to trust the purpose of the storms in our life. Instead of trembling in fear over the storm, trust the purpose of the storm. Don't tremble, just trust. Storms, by the way, if you don't know this, storms in life are the breeding ground for the miracles of God that he wants to do. And that is what you have to just hold on to. Just focus on what God is doing in the storm and just pray your way through it and keep your eyes on Jesus. So following Jesus does not prevent you from going through storms. It just means that while you're going through them, you have the person and the presence of Jesus with you as you do it. Watch what happens here in verse 19. It says, when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles. Now let me pause here. I know what you're probably thinking, because it's the same thing that I would be thinking when I'm thinking, row 3-4 miles? Like, man, I can get on a smooth lake and man, I can just go to town 3-4 miles. Isn't a big deal. But if we flip back over into Mark's account of this, it says, in Mark's account, he says that they were straining at the oars. So waves are crazy. Wind is beating against them. They're supposed to go to the other side of the sea where Jesus told them to go. And they are rowing, and they're rowing, and they're rowing, and they're getting nowhere fast. And they are straining, it says, as Mark would record, against the oars. And by the way, these are not novice men at sea. These men were what? They were fishermen. They had been out to sea. They have done these things. They have experienced storms at the sea before, but they are straining here. Now, I don't know about you, but there are days that I just struggle with some things that I know really well. I mean, these guys are fishermen. They know the sea. They know how this stuff works. But today, in this moment, they're struggling and they're straining. And I do. There are just days that I struggle with things that I know really well. When my mom gets cancer, like, why my mom? When things get difficult in your life, I mean, how many times do we look around the world and we go, why are the good people getting the hard knocks? And these people who are just doing shady stuff consistently, why are they just cruising through in life? And I know, I know, what I know is that all of this is part of the fall, that we are all going to go through difficulties and we're all going to go through trials. And as a matter of fact, the Apostle Paul would say, all who want to live godly lives in Christ Jesus, you will suffer persecution. That's something that Paul tells us. I know all this, but yet when I'm in it, man, I struggle with it. And I struggle bad, right? We've all been there. We know that when people say ugly things to us, I don't know. Some of y'all may, people can say ugly things to you and you'd be like, whatever, doesn't bother me. But for the 99.9% of the rest of us, when people say ugly things and it does hurt, we know, I know that that's all part of the fall, that the reason that's happening, that's just sin. It's not personal, it's sin. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against powers and principalities. We know that this is not a personal battle, it's spiritual warfare. And when somebody says things about us, it's like, okay, I know that, yes, this is spiritual, but boy, it just sure feels personal. And I just struggle with it sometimes. As much as I can read the word and I can convince myself that this is a spiritual battle, I can just repeat it over and over again, and that's not personal, and I'm going to love that person in spite of and regardless of what has happened and what has been said, that it just still hurts. And as much as I know it, I still struggle with it. And there are just days that feel more difficult to navigate than others, and I'm straining at the oars. And that's exactly where his disciples are. Look at how it finishes up here in verse 19. It says, so when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and coming near the boat, and they were frightened. Why were the disciples frightened? Well, first of all, let me just say, the bottom line reason why they're frightened is they didn't recognize Jesus. They didn't know it was him. And so, first of all, It's just not a place, right? Like they're in the middle of the ocean, they're rowing, the wind, the waves, I mean, everything's going crazy, and they're just straining at the oars, and they're in their own power and in their own effort, they're trying to figure this thing out, and how are we going to get to the other side of the sea where Jesus told us to go? How are we going to make this happen? And then all of a sudden, they see somebody walking on water. This is not a place that you would expect to see somebody walking. And so because it wasn't a place they expected to see Jesus, they assumed, as other accounts would say, they assumed, as Matthew would say, that it was a ghost. And they had become, again, so focused on, so number one, it wasn't a place that they expected to see Jesus. Number two, they had been so focused on figuring their own way out of this thing, and they were so exhausted from fighting the fight that they did not recognize the person and the presence of Jesus. Here's the thing, they were trying to utilize their knowledge and strength to find a way out of trouble that they completely failed to recognize the one who was right beside them, who had the ability to calm the storm. He had the power to do that, and they failed to miss him. Now, it's also the darkest hours of the day. It's between 3 and 6 a.m. And here's the deal, when we go through these things in life, I mean, it's easy to look at the disciples and go, well, they were just dumb. I mean, the book of Acts even calls them ordinary, uneducated men. The Greek word is idiotes. So we look at it and we go, yeah, they were idiots. We would never do that. You and I, we never go through storms in life and fail to recognize the person and presence of Jesus, do we? We don't ever go, how could our lives change, and how could our struggles in life change if we immediately begin to seek out the person and presence of Jesus? And Jesus is right here. He's walking on the water, and it says they were frightened. But he said to them, and here's an interesting moment in verse 20, but he said to them, "It is I, do not be afraid." And in the Greek, what he's saying is he's borrowing from the Old Testament for the formal name of God. It is I am. The formal name of God. Jesus is identifying himself in that moment as God. Do not be afraid. It is I am. It is Yahweh God. It is Jesus, the Messiah. He is telling the disciples, don't be afraid. And he identifies who it is. And here's what's really interesting. If you flip over to Matthew's account, this is the only account that records what happens with Peter. And I want to focus here for just a second. After he says, "Take heart, it is I, or I am, do not be afraid," it said, "And Peter said to him, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you. Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you on the water." Now, I don't know about you, but when there is a storm and the seas look like that, and it is crazy, 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 the last thing that I want to do is get out of the boat. Anybody with me on that? I mean, I just watched... what's that show? I just watched Castaway the other day. When Wilson took off. Like he had that like moment where it's like, what's on? And his boat's over here. And he says, I got to go back to the boat. When the storms are crazy, the last thing that I want to do is get out of the boat. And Peter says, hey, if it's you, and by the way, let me break down the Greek in that statement that Peter makes. Peter's not really saying, if it's you, as if I don't believe it's you. In other words, basically what Peter is saying is he's saying, because it's you, call me out onto the water. Now that's crazy. That's faith. That's what I call swinging for the fences. Hey, Jesus, because it's you, call me out onto the water. And so I want to just talk to you for just a couple seconds about calling. There are different types of calling. A lot of times we hear people use that word and we go, oh, well, calling is what God does for preachers. Well, that's partly true. But there's other types of callings in Scripture. First of all, you were called to salvation, right? You were called by God. No one comes to me unless the Father draws them. You were called to salvation. So when you come, God calls you like, all right, get out of your boat and trust me. Get out of your boat, and you could use the boat for any type of imagery you want. The boat could be your little happy place. The boat could be your safety area. The boat could be your life and the thing that you've made and built on your own in order to navigate the seas of life. Whatever it is, Jesus calls them out of that, says, get out of your comfort zone, get out of that stuff, and you step out and you follow me. And Peter says, because it's you, call me out onto the water. can I just ask you to pray a really bold prayer this week? I want to challenge you, wherever you're at. I don't care if it's on the car ride home today. I don't care if it's the invitation today. I don't care if it's when you're sitting at your house or at your desk at work this week. Wherever it is, I want to ask you to pray a very bold prayer. Jesus, because it's you, because you are God, because you are the Messiah, because you have power over all things, because you know me and you created me, because it's you, call me. And he probably won't call you to ministry, maybe, but he will call you to something. And when he does, and that's where, Peter could have sat in the boat with his baseball bat and just left it on his shoulder. So, oh, that's a cool one, Jesus. Man, that's awesome. How'd you pull that off? I mean, if you just turn this water to wine, we'll never thirst again. But he doesn't. He says, because it's you, the power in our life, the power in your life, you were created on purpose, for a purpose, with a purpose. The purpose and the power in your life comes in the calling of God on your life. And Jesus, but we got to pray the prayer. Peter says, Jesus, because it's you, whatever you call me to, as impossible as it may seem, Jesus, if it's you, call me and I'll step out. I'll come on the water. See, Peter believed that if Jesus called him to walk on water, Peter was going to walk on water. And here's what happens. Look in verse 29. Jesus says, come. Jesus is waiting for you and me to go, because it's you, call me. Because it's you, call me. Pray this week. All right, Jesus, I believe in you. I believe it's you. Call me. What do you want to call me to? So Peter got out of the boat and he walked on water and came to Jesus. Now watch this, verse 30. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and he began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. Now a lot of us, when we read this, we go, Peter is such a failure. I'm like, wait a minute, there's two people that have ever walked on water. One of them's Jesus. The other one's Peter. And see, we look at Peter and go, oh, he got his eyes off. He was focused on the wind and he got distracted and he sunk. While we're talking about Peter in that fashion, the rest of us, me and you know what we're doing? We're in the boat. Where are all the other disciples at? There were 12 disciples in that boat. There was not just one. It wasn't just Peter. The rest of the disciples were in the boat. And you know what? The other disciples, I guarantee you, when Jesus brings Peter, first of all, this is another beautiful story. As Peter's sinking, Jesus reaches down, grabs him, pulls him up, and Jesus walks him on the water back to the boat. And when they get back in the boat, I bet the disciples weren't sitting there going, Peter, you're such a loser, man. Like, they weren't doing that. I guarantee you, every one of the other disciples were sitting there going, man, I wish I'd have done that. And see, that's where a lot of us live our life. Again, bat on the shoulder, sitting in the boat. Jesus gives us a call, or Jesus is here. And if we will just simply go, Jesus, because it's you, call me, and then believe and trust in whatever he calls you to do, he will fully equip you to do. Jesus, y'all have heard this before. Jesus doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. So call me, and then give me what I need to do what it is that you've called me to do in life. I want to swing for the fences. Jesus, I want to round the bases. I want to do whatever I can for your glory. I want to do whatever I can to see your power at work in my life. We will never crush our calling while we're playing it safe. You never do it. You'll never get to see you'll never get to experience the joy of the ball flying off the bat and just sailing out of sight when you never swing. We will never walk on water unless we get out of the boat. You'll never do it. And in verse 31, it says, Jesus immediately reached out, took his hand, took hold of him, and sang to him, "O you of little faith, why did you doubt?" And then when they got into the boat, the wind ceased. And those in the boat worshiped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." The result of salvation, according to what we see John record, is that for the life of the believer, there is a calling. Calls us to salvation, and then I believe he calls us to do something to build the kingdom. In other words, as believers, as when you come to faith in Christ, every one of us receives the Holy Spirit, and through the Holy Spirit, we receive these things called spiritual gifts. They are to be used for the building up of the body of Christ. He has called every single one of us to do something, and I know a lot of us, we just get into this thing of going, well, God can't really use my talent or my giftedness. God can't use me because I don't even think I'm capable. Look, you're not capable. That's the beauty of it. That's why it's called a spiritual gift. He gives it to you. And then you begin to do things that you never thought you could do. You begin walking on water, and it's an amazing, amazing journey that God has for us. So the result of salvation is this: calling, the calling that God gives you, and calm. It's the calling and the calm. Jesus steps into the boat. When he gets into the boat, the wind ceases and the waves cease. And in that moment, they went, truly, you're God. And when we do that, like when we step out, because it's you, call me, and we step out, even though we sink, the calling is amazing. It's adrenaline rushing. And then in the storms of life, we get the calmness of God. Many of you, again, have asked how I'm doing. And I just, based on my mother's passing, and I'm good. I mean, I do just this peace. And the reason is because Jesus, when the storms of life were coming, Jesus just stepped in my boat. And the winds ceased. Death, where is your sting? Jesus conquered the enemy that my mom was facing. He conquered death. He conquered the grave. So because cancer didn't end my mom's existence, just transitioned it. And because of that, does it hurt? Yeah, for sure. Many of you who've gone through losing someone that was close to you, or a loved one, you know that there's that feeling of, I'll never be able to pick the phone up again and call her and talk to him. But there's still just this peace that God gives. So I want to challenge you today. The result of salvation, the two results according to the miracle that we see of Peter and the disciples in the boat, it's calling and calming. Calling and calming. Which of the two do you need the most today?